Talked about it on Tuesday's show. Let's break down some more of these who holds the keys to the college football playoff. Volume 2, if you will. And the place that I want to start is in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Jaden Daniels and company, man. LSU is going to be the favorite for a lot of people to win that side of the SEC. They did it last year. Like, might go for it again. It was Brian Kelly's first year. It was Jaden Daniels' first year at LSU. Like, why the heck not, right? It's a fair thought process to have. I think the big variable for me, the key I'm looking at with Jaden Daniels and LSU, is Jaden Daniels able to take that next step. Like, I get excited talking about this, so bear with me here. If he's able to push the ball downfield, and not able to so much as willing to push the ball downfield, able to take that 50-50 shot and trust his guy, then as a secondary, as a defense, you have to honor that. And you got to take some guys out of run support because you know Jaden Daniels will pull the trigger. And so when you take guys out of run support, what does that do? Well, it gives you more space to then run the football, something LSU did really well at times last year. And when LSU was able to run the football well, especially in the read option game, that offense was rolling. Like, that was when they turned a corner in my mind. That Ole Miss game comes to mind when you talk about LSU turning the corner. What else? The Alabama game when they ran the football effectively at times. Like, that really is who LSU, I think, wants to be. But again, to create that picture, you got to have a quarterback that's willing to push the ball downfield. And willing to is where it starts. And after you're willing to do it, you got to connect on it. And I think they have the tools to do it. And I think those are the conversations they're having with Jaden Daniels right now. I mean, Brian Kelly came on this very show and talked about it. So for LSU and Jaden Daniels, pushing the ball downfield. It sounds simple, has a big ripple effect for what LSU could do in 2023 if they want to get to the college football playoff. Because that defense is going to be nasty now. Defense is going to be nasty. They've proven they can hang with just about anybody. I'm excited to see how they look in their second year under Brian Kelly and how that culture looks in terms of being the same team week in and week out. We've talked about that before, but that's something I'm looking to see for them. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're locked in. Not going to waste too much more time. Thank you in advance for that. All right. Also, make sure you like the video. Again, 100 likes. That's the goal. So let's keep it rolling now. Thank you in advance for that. All right. Florida State, man. We're going to talk about them here in just a minute in terms of what their record's going to be in 2023. I'm going to give you a prediction here in just a minute if you're tuned into the podcast, the full podcast, or the full live show. But for Florida State, man, my big question lies in their approach. How do they handle the bright lights? I don't have a ton of questions about personnel with them. Like, they have the number one returning production in the country. Bring back like 90+% production of a defense that only allowed like 21, 22 points a game. They're going to be really good defensively. You bring back the quarterback, Jordan Travis. He was awesome last year. They scored 35 points a game. How do they handle, though, a full offseason of people talking about them, of people picking them to be in the college football playoff? Like, this is new territory for this team. It is. They won double-digit games a year ago, but going into last year, a lot of people were saying, I don't know if Mike Norvell's the guy, man. They missed a bowl game last year. Like, I know we're building to it. He's working through the portal, and they're trying to get it back to, being where we expect to be. But, like, I don't know about Florida State. And then they popped off. Now, nobody's going to be surprised if Florida State comes out and wins double-digit games. That's the expectation. I'm curious to see how they handle that from a psyche perspective. I believe in Mike Norvell. I think he's the absolute man. But that's going to be key for Florida State because everything they want to do is available to them in terms of the personnel. The personnel won't limit them, in my opinion. 2 huge games. Week 1 against LSU in Orlando on a Sunday. That will be a movie if it's anything like what we saw last year. And then the game at Clemson. Both, if I'm not mistaken, are very early in the year. I believe Clemson is week 4. So those first 4 games for Florida State are going to, really shape their season, especially in the ACC race in that game against Clemson. So that'll be crucial. But handling the bright lights, man, that is my big question when it comes to Florida State and them getting to where they want to go, which is obviously the college football playoff and beyond that to the national title. Now, speaking of Clemson, a lot of people just kind of looking past Clemson this year. Clemson for the first time is kind of playing that underdog role going into this season. And a lot of people will put Clemson in the underdog role once the season gets going, but for the most part, they're usually one of those teams that you talk about making a run at it and the ACC not being that strong. Well, that's not the case this year, man. North Carolina's got Drake May. We just told you about Florida State. I think NC State's even going to be halfway decent. Clemson's going to have their work cut out for them. But the thing that I love about the team, the way they're built, this defense, man. Defense is solid. 75% of the production back from a season ago. I think Barrett Carter is going to be one of the best backers in the country. Dude's an absolute man-child. They allowed 22 points a game last year. And like I just said, 3/4 of the production of that defense is back. So the defense, I think, is going to be solid. My big question for Clemson is, does Cade Klubnik and Garrett Riley click? And what I mean by click, I don't mean personally do they get along. I don't have any reservations about that. I think from what I've heard, they're both pretty outstanding human beings. So that's one piece of it. But the other piece of this is, if Clemson is able to be explosive offensively, be able to push the ball downfield offensively, that's going to apply some pressure to some teams. That's going to force some teams to kind of have to answer scores, if you will. And I don't know that teams are going to be able to do that against Clemson with this defense, because I believe in this defensive unit. I'm just curious if Cade Klubnik is the upgrade that a lot of people believe he's going to be. To be transparent, I believe it's going to work. I think it's going to be great. I believe in Cade Klubnik. My question, though, is how quickly and how effectively does it click? Because a lot of people last year, if you had a gripe with Clemson, it was how explosive were they downfield. That's kind of, multifaceted. A lot of people were quick to blame, DJ Uiagalelei. And I think you always have to give some blame to the quarterback, but I also look at the receiving core. You got to separate. Also look at the offensive game plan. We got to scheme stuff up so we can set up the defense and get explosive plays. I don't think you just put the blame on DJU. And so that's the reason why my question is, do Cade Klubnik and Garrett Riley create some magic with scheming up explosive plays and, by a result of that, scoring a whole lot of points? Because if they do now, it's going to be a very, very big deal for Clemson. Because then that puts the pressure back into the opposing offense. And if the game is in your defense's hands, I think 9 times out of 10 you feel really good if you're a Clemson Tiger fan. So that's the big deal for Clemson. And the things that you look at for last year, the games they lost, it felt like, is when the offense kind of left the defense hanging. Right? Now, it wasn't all the losses, but there was a couple games where it felt like, okay, offense, we're holding it down, if we're on the defensive side. And then eventually, hey, man, you're going to leave us out there. If we can't get anything going, there's got to be some balance here. So it's a long-winded way to tell you I think Cade Klubnik and Garrett Riley are going to click, and that is a huge key to the college football playoff. Because if you win the ACC, even with one loss, I think you're in. Now, a lot of things depend on, where the rest of the college football landscape stands, but I think that'll be good enough. So take that as you will when it comes to Clemson. Last key I want to talk about for the college football playoff, we got to go out to the West Coast now, because Utah isn't getting talked about nearly enough, and they've won the conference the last 2 years, and we're all quick to talk about USC, and for good reason, right? They got the Heisman Trophy quarterback coming back in Caleb Williams. My question for Utah, my question for the college football playoff, is Utah still the bully out west? Are they still that troll under the bridge just saying nobody's getting past us? Because they were the last 2 years. 2 consecutive seasons, they had a rematch in the Pac-12 title game and just made it look like child's play. Last year against USC, the year before against Oregon, and it was just we are the more physical, we are the more tough, we are the more organized operation. You're not getting past us. And both those seasons, Utah didn't make it to the college football playoff. They were the bully out west, and did they have a perfect season? No, but they were for sure not letting you get back the conference crown. That was how Utah operated last year. But the reason why this is a question for me, if Utah's not that bully anymore, well, then there's some teams now that can pass through that bridge that the troll is no longer under. USC is the most obvious one. Oregon with Bo Nix back. If they're able to be better in the secondary defensively, that could change things. Washington. Y'all, I don't know if we're all on the same page here. Washington, I think, could very well be a top 10 team through the first month of the season. Michael Penix Jr. back, that offense was explosive. There's a lot of firepower here in the Pac-12. Now, it could just be gladiator style, and they all just beat each other up, and that's the way it goes, and nobody gets out again. But I'll just say this. Utah, the question mark for me is, how does Cam Rising respond to that injury. And I'm not talking about response like how does he emotionally respond. I'm talking about, is he able to get back to the version of himself that Utah needs to win the Pac-12 again and be a college football playoff team? Because Cam Rising does so much for that team. I mean, even running the football, he is a force for them last year. So Utah being that bully, it's going to be a big part of it. I'll even say this too. If Utah is that bully and they win the Pac-12 with one loss, or dare I say they win the Pac-12 and go undefeated, just run the table, they just decide to flex their muscle this year, and Cam Rising says, nope, I'm him, I'm bouncing back from the ACL, then Utah could be a college football playoff team. So you see where I'm going with this? This is a key to the college football playoff, because if Utah gets overthrown, the door is open for some teams to make it to the big dance. So I'm excited to see that. So that's the Volume 2 version of these keys to the college football playoff. To recap it for you, Jaden Daniels take another step. Florida State handling the limelight. Cade Klubnik and Garrett Riley clicking, creating explosive plays for Clemson. Good things could happen because then you feed the defense some desperate offenses on the other side of things. So that'd be a good way for Clemson to live. Is Utah still the bully out west? I don't know, but I can't wait to find out, because if they are, they could be in the playoff, and if they're not, there's some other teams in the Pac-12 that I think have a very real shot to get in there. USC being the one that I think is the most obvious. So we'll leave it at that for you. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.